Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is going to be one of those times where I don't know if I'm going to hit my target audience, but this is going to be debugging vibe coding. And that's really what it is. And so I know that vibe coding is really caught on. I've been vibe coding before it was a vibe coding. Been creating these applications purely using AI prompt engineering. My background as an IT director this is what I did. I worked with junior developers, interns, senior developers, and I guided them through the software that I wanted to be built. Took the requirements from a business, listened to those requirements, created and designed the software so that it integrated with our systems. And so that is what we're doing today when we're starting to vibe code. For those who are trying to get from vibe coding, small applications to being able to vibe code enterprise-wide solutions, I'm going to walk you through some of the tips and tricks that I've learned in my last year of doing vibe coding, some of the tips and tricks that I've tried with debugging software, because I find that that's where our most frustration is going to lie. It is inevitable that something is going to go wrong as you code through vibe coding. Absolutely, positively. It might be your sixth prompt, it might be your second prompt, it might be your first prompt, but there will be things that go wrong. And where do you rewind to? Because that's really cool. You can rewind here. Where do you restart from? That's really cool because you can do that here. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to make sure that we have the ability to go forward and back in our code base. We want to be able to talk directly to our AIs in ways that can be repeated because they forget all the time. If you think that they have this giant long-term memory, they've gotten better, but in any kind of large app that I've developed, that continues to get smaller and smaller. So their ability, as the app grows, their ability to be on spot becomes less and less accurate. So we have to design our applications in such a way that we start by taking all of the hard stuff and getting it done up first. And then as we finish the application off, it really should be getting easier and easier. So as the decoherence of the language model in trying to keep all of this in context and being able to make judgments, weighing all of this, as that degrades, we want to be able to give it easier tasks, and we want to be able to have those tasks laid out in smaller portions so that it can take smaller bites to move forward. So with that being said, I've got my windows shared here, and I am going to basically show you kind of what's been happening. So if I jump onto this this window here, this is the CRM that I'm creating, and you can see that on this it's a leads details page. You can see it's going to persons 8, but what's happening here is we're getting this error in the browser. These you can see by, let me go ahead and show this just in case this is brand new. So here I am running into a page error, right? I don't know what this page is doing. Does it send emails? Does it send MLS? So it looks like everything's fine, right? Now this is one of the very first things you're going to want to look at when you start vibe coding, is that on the outside, this web page may look absolutely fine. It may look like it's always supposed to look. But on the inside, what's actually happening, if I right click and I hit inspect, I can actually go to my console. And this console is where all of these error messages are going to be displayed. And so we can see that a lot of the stuff is working. We've got I've got Claude. It will often write a bunch of stuff to the console so that we can trace through it and debug with it. You can ask it to write, can we put more logging into the console? And those are great tips when you start running into errors that don't make sense. And then from there, what I've done here is I've got these errors, some sort of 500 error. Well, we just got done making it a bunch of database changes, so I'm positive that that's what it's going to be around. But what I do then is I take this entire thing, I can highlight it, I hold down shift and click at the bottom, that's how I do it. Or you can right click on here and you can say copy console, and you can do either of those, and then you bring it back over, and now I'm going to be over in my IDE. Today I'm using Cursor. And so I come back over here into my IDE, and I just did this, that's why I'm scrolling up. Oh yeah, so right here I pasted that code into my IDE, and I'm using Claude 4 Sonnet. Pasted it into my IDE, And then I find that this helps. You may not, everybody has their preferences, but I like to be as, I don't know, mirroring to the language model as I can. So if I'm starting to get frustrated, I want to be able to reflect that frustration, but I want to reflect it in an accurate way. And I'm going to tell you a trick here that I don't think everybody knows. If you reflect it too aggressively or too appreciatively, and it's not actually how it is, it will change its behavior in such a way that if you're overly praising, sometimes it will go and spend more time on the stuff that you feel like you called out, but that's not really what you're trying to build. So if you say, oh, great design, I love the drop shadows, and I love the way you chose fonts, right? And then you say, but we still got some errors and I can't submit to the database. That's great. But the problem is that now emphasizing the design, you might find that the AI is spending more and more additional time with the design. And now you're going to need to recenter the language model and say, I'm super happy with the design. Let's not focus on it anymore. Let's shift our efforts into being a software developer and architect that can find the issues between our database and our front end code. Now you recenter it again, but you have to be mindful of these things because if you're not, they will start to drift. So with that being said, I have taken the error or the JavaScript here on my left screen and I've pasted it over here. I didn't give it too much information other than basically said, hey, we're getting really close because we did have hundreds of errors and now we're down to just a small handful. So it went through, it made some code changes. I think that everybody who is starting to get into vibe coding, you don't have to understand this. This is one of the cool parts about this, but you don't have to understand what this is saying. What you have to understand is just enough to be able to look at this and start making mental notes of it. That's all we really need to do. So I'm going to just walk through so that you can kind of hear out loud what some of this would look like, because this is important for being able to debug and understand your software. So if you're just starting out in software or if you're just starting out in vibe coding, then I want to just let you hear my thoughts, and that will catch you up on some of the concepts that maybe get missed in tutorials. So I'll read out loud, apologize for that, but let me clean up the file and try to save it as a different approach. Okay, I didn't start at the beginning. Let's start at the very beginning here, sorry. Okay, this is my pasting in the error message. So we'll start right here. Excellent progress, because I basically at the end of my message said we're making great progress. And it said excellent progress. The clean person-centric architecture, this is what I'm designing for. So when the vibe coding architecture originally started, what happened was that this was not a person-centric architecture. It was some sort of hybrid that I didn't catch in the original architecture. And then it propagated and it was working, so I kind of let it spread. And then I found that it wasn't going to be functional. It was basically, it was a disease. It was AI design that went rotten. And so this is always going to be the downfall of every vibe project. At some point, something is going to be AI vibe coding going rotten right now. Maybe they'll get that worked out in the future, but for today, you just have to accept it. So with that being said, we have this person-centric architecture that I wanted. So I went back and I completely did the database one piece at a time, rebuilt the database. Then I went through and I started having to redo each API to that, had to handle each one of those. And now I've finally got it to where it's this person-centric architecture. But that's not what I wanted to show. I wanted to show that we're going to go through and it acknowledges, yes, we've progressed from a 404 error to a 500 error. And what that means is basically something. A 404, you probably may or may not know, but it just means I couldn't find what I was looking for. And a 500 error means I found what I was looking for, but something broke. And so with those in the background now, you can say that our communication routes, which is how things could get lost, have been fixed. That's what we were dealing with last time. So that's the communication routes. So you can think of communication routes as basically your phone number and phone book. So before you couldn't find who to talk to. So you'd have a phone number without a name, you'd have a name without a phone number, and so it was just these two pieces were broken. And so it's fixed all of those. So now we have all the numbers and names kind of lined up. You can think of it like that. And now there's a server-side issue. So that basically means that something in the code is not compiling correctly. So if you're using incorrect syntax, or if you have let's see, what are some of the other ways that you could have server-side errors? Incorrect syntax, you could have function calls that don't exist, you can have database errors, anything that throws an error that you don't really get to see is going to be a server-side error. And so there's kind of a handful of errors. Maybe I'll touch on each of them, but you have compile time errors, you have runtime errors, you have server-side errors, you have browser-side errors. So we'll touch on all of those, and each one of those has its place. But so then the AI says, I'm going to go check the server logs. That's great, right? Now learn from this, because if you're running into something and the AI is having problems, you can ask it, can I see the server logs? You don't have to know where to go. You can just ask it, right? And so sometimes that could be something that stops you. And so, hey, can I see the server logs? What part of the server logs are you looking for? Ask questions about these, and that'll help you kind of troubleshoot and guide the AI to where it's blind. And that's totally okay. So now it's going to go check the person communication routes and see what's causing the 500 errors. So it's checking the routes so that it knows where to look. So it's making sure that this phone number goes to this person. And now if that's where that person's phone number is, let's go to their address and see why they're not answering the phone, because the phone's ringing. Okay, I can see the issue. The communication routes are using timestamp with double quotes, which might be causing PostgreSQL issues. Let me check the communication table, if the communication table exists, and what the actual column names are. So what we have here is we have a syntax error. So it doesn't want us to use quotes in the code that goes to the database. You don't need to know any of that, but that's what's happening here. Then it's based on my memory about terminal commands. This didn't work. I need to analyze the code, fix the likely issue. Looking at the communication routes, I suspect the issue is with the column names or the table structure. Let me fix the communication routes based on the standard database scheme. So it's going through trying to change the routes based on the scheme, fix the issues, fix the column reference, added error details, safe null handling. So this is all that you really need to do. Start training yourself to read these out loud. Don't skip over them. You can be brief with them, but start understanding what they are. And as you go more and more, you'll basically see a pattern, because they're going to follow the same patterns. All applications, all software kind of follows the same patterns. And so those become second nature to you after some time, but don't stress it right up front, because if it doesn't make sense, you're going to still be okay. There's front end errors. So now what's happening here is we're basically running the server in dev mode. We are going through and doing some tests and seeing what is happening. We're looking up into the database to see if the database and our code matches up. It's going to create a test file, which it did. Then it cleaned it up. It's making notes on why it's doing it. It found an error, so it's disabling the note loadings. Because it found an error there, it wants to see if it can isolate the mistakes. Instead of handling one or two mistakes simultaneously, it's going to just try to handle one at a time. Let's see here. Now let me start the front end to test the communications are working. So now it's going to start up the front end. So in my application, because I have a database and a server that runs the basic back-end logic, the business logic, that's on one side. And then I have a web page, that's the front side. And so then you have a middle tier that we use APIs and connectors to make these communications happen. But that's a little more than we need to go into. What we're trying to do today is just learn some debugging tricks. So talking about taking all of the browser console window, giving it back to the AI, that's the first one. Learning how to ask questions about your logs, that's another great one. So now it says that everything's fixed. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to come back into my browser. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, and I'm going to refresh this page. And instead of getting all of those errors that I got before, now I've got just these. And these two errors are not two separate errors. If you look at them close, they're the same error twice. So something is happening on this page. It's making these errors show up twice. But I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to go copy console, back over to my cursor IDE. I'm going to paste those errors in, and then I'm just going to keep the momentum positive and flat. So I want to make sure that we're still engaged. I'm still engaged because I feel like sometimes if we paste these in with no messages, just as we're disengaging, the AI gets disengaged. So I kind of feel like it is important to kind of mirror the energy that you want to see back. So I want this AI to take this, continue to be deliberate, and to finish this part strong. So I want it to stay engaged, know that we have more to do. So I'm going to just say, this is getting better each time, right? So that's great. We are getting solid before we get to build on this foundation, because this really is true. We are going to need to build on this. So I'm being honest, and it's getting better each time. I'm being honest in the fact that what we're trying to do right now is build a foundation. So I want it in its own logic. It's going to kind of say, what am I doing right now? And it's going to build a slightly broader foundation from my context, because it knows it's foundational. So then I hit run. This is going to take some time. It's going to go through. It's going to start looking at what it needs to do. It's happy about the progress. It's getting more solid each time. It's reinforcing my own message. So it reinforces it to itself. And this is important. This is like AI self-talk, just like how we have self-talk in our head. So the clean person-centric architecture is working beautifully. We're successfully handling the communication errors gracefully. I can see several positive developments. Okay, so major progress made. I want to read these. Clean person-centric navigation. Front-end navigation is working. Person details working. Authentication is working. Error handling is working. Server issues are identified. Now our next step is to complete the clean architecture. So it's going to go through, it's going to start working these out, doing some testing. These green lines are the new lines. Red lines are lines that have been removed, just for anybody out there who is, and see, maybe I don't know who my target audience is here today, because here I am going through a very complex software architecture, and at the same time, I'm talking to you like you don't know what a change set is. So wherever you are, there's going to be more information here than you probably can take all in one sitting. And so what I encourage you to do is to really start learning how to think about these problems, these solutions, how to start learning how to debug with these tools, because we can create amazing things. So wherever you're at on your journey, let's just keep going, because each day your knowledge is increasing. But not only that, the AI is going to meet you in the middle, because each day AI is getting better. The tools are getting better. The resources are getting better. The trainings are getting better. So I just heard the little ding, which means the cursor is done. So here's what we've got. Here's the summary. It's got a clean person-centric architecture. It's made some changes, front-end navigation, API architecture, which is all good. Database integration is good. So if this was your app, you would know what these are. This is my app, and so I'm not going to go into too much of them, but you want to continue to read these, just like how I'm reading this. I'm probably close to 100 hours into this application right now, which is not great, because I was probably at the same point 40 hours in, and in the same point. So the last maybe 60 hours have really been designing around some of these architecture changes that I've wanted, and playing with the AI and learning how to make these processes a little bit better each time. So with that being said, so if I'm 100 hours in, could I have developed this CRM myself using just 100 hours if I hand coded it? No, I don't think I could have. I've built applications that are this complex, this big, many times. I'll be honest, the last handful of times I've built them, I've been part of a team. And so we've all been able to shake hands and bump knuckles and agree on what it is that we're building. And we've all been trying to work for it. But if I was to estimate this in my last roles as IT directors and IT managers, and what I would say that we would be to this spot in about a month. And I would say that we would be probably at the 80% part, but I think that we would find errors and bugs through the next 2 months as we've kind of refined it, as the users came back with more features and more nuances that they wanted built in. And so what we've done now is we've basically taken maybe just a little bit of time off of that. However, we've also done is we've been able to bring a lot of knowledge to this workspace. And in theory, I think because of the way that it's been designed and it's been documented, that I think bug fixes are going to be less impactful than they are in a human-centric software design shop, because what's going to happen now is AI, it's been able to find all these bugs over and over and over again. It kind of knows where to work, knows where to look. It can read through our documentation faster. It can read through our code faster than humans can. And so maybe you have some parodies up front. But I actually think that some of the advantages that people don't consider is that if you design your software AI-centric to begin with, then AI-centric maintenance becomes way cheap. You could almost have AIs self-heal their software. So we're going to be talking about some really cool concepts in the future, but for right now, let's just keep going with how to debug these. This is another spot over here that we can see what error messages are happening. And so in my case, since I'm using Cloud4 Sonnet, it's going to open up these console windows to do stuff. And so here it's opening up a console window and it's trying to, and this happens all the time, it's opening up a console window. What it's trying to do is it's trying to get this port to be in use, but because it didn't stop the old one, it just started a new one, it's going to get this error. So I'm going to terminate that. I don't need it. And then let's see, you can see here's another server running. Here's another server running, already in use again. So these things happen on a regular basis. So this is some of the ways that you can clean up the noise. This one looks like it could be running on port 3301. That's going to be a front end one for me. This one looks like it's running because you can see it's in the middle of a command. This one looks like it's running. Why do I have so many running? That's a good question. Not necessarily one that I care to dive into right now. All right, so I have basically refreshed my screen. I don't have any errors over here, so the AI has cleaned those errors up. But what I also noticed is that my leads page here from a couple of minutes ago has been greatly reduced. So what I need to do is I'm going to come into my my pages and I'm going to just run through all of these. So here we have some more errors. So as I jump around, I'm going to start finding these errors again. Again, I'm going to take a big chunk of this, I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it directly into my IDE, give it a quick message, found a new one on the dashboard. So this knows that something that we recently changed, that's why I'm using the word new, something that we recently changed, where it's located, is going to help it. It may be able to get that just out of the context. It may not. And so I feel like if I was getting a report or a request from a user saying, I got a bug, what I would want to know is what page it was on, what were you doing, and how long has it been there. So I try to give those types of tips to the debugging AI just because I think that those are useful and can allow it to work a little bit faster. All right, let's see if we have any mistakes over here in our contacts. This is taking some time. This probably is not a good sign. Just spinning. Awesome. So I'm going to refresh this page because these errors can be from previous loads. So just because you see errors over here, this is kind of can be a log. It can clean itself out sometimes depending on how the structure is, but it's just a log. So if I refresh my page here, I'm not getting any errors, but I am getting this spinning icon. So this is another great way to help the AI is I'm going to take a screen capture. So I'm going to hold down my Windows key, my Shift key, and I'm going to hit the S key. That's the shortcut for the Windows snipping tool. And what I'm going to do is I want to give it as much context that I think is relevant, but not more than I think is relevant. So I'm going to take my image right here. I'm going to snip it, and now it's on my clipboard, but I'm going to walk you through why I snipped it where I did. So I'm giving it all of the console logs. So it's able to take a look and it's going to see what was happening, what loaded, what didn't load. It's going to be able to see the variables that are printing out in the console log. It's going to be able to see the spinner. It's going to be able to see the URL that I have. And this is all valuable context. And so with that, I go ahead and come back into my IDE. It's just finishing up my last problem. So now it's confident that it's fully implemented, that the front-end navigation is good, the API architecture is correct, database integrations, communication table columns, okay, person-centric, no status columns. All right. So I think it's done some goofiness. I'm going to have to go look at that in here in just a second, but I knew that was kind of coming. So great. We have some success. So I think that that's all good. It didn't have anything else that I needed to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit paste. You can see that that drops the image into my AI's context awareness. So these files right here are what the AI is currently kind of looking at it. So you can think of it as these are the things on its desk. It will clean this up as soon as it's done because once we talk about it and it deals with it, it'll just throw it away. But it will have it in its memory. It will remember that, oh, I was just looking at that image. So just because it doesn't show up here doesn't mean that it can't remember it. So that's true for all of these, but it's always nice to kind of leave them on its desk. But don't give it too many things on its desk because what will happen is just like you, if you leave too many things on your desk, you will also find that you're getting lost. Okay, with that, I'm going to take that. We've got the image in there, and I'm going to give it some context on this. So I clicked on the Contacts tab. Let's make sure we got it right. Clicked on the Contacts tab. And then clicked the eyeball for contacts details and got an error. This would probably be fine because you, oh, didn't get an error, sorry. And got a spinning loader that never stopped. See image. Okay, now I'm also going to take from here and I'm going to take and say, because I know more about this application and because I know that we're messing with IDs, now you may not know that, and it's okay to just give exactly what I've typed here, but if you are experienced, if you do see more to give, there's no reason not to. I think this is based on the route changes we made to the person and the leads and the contacts, so they are all person ID centric. So I can't be sure. Take a look and see if that helps. So what we're doing is we're basically just throwing out ideas, just like I would tell one of my other developers. I would say, I bet it could be related to a change we just made in such and such system. And so as we start thinking about this, it's helpful to give that context. AI will often find these things, but what I find is that if you want to be efficient at it, you're going to want to zone in and help it find stuff faster. So instead of just saying, here's an error, it will, and then you watch its logs, it'll sit there and it'll think, and then it'll try something, then it'll think, then it'll try something, then it'll check something, then it'll try something, and then it'll check something that's already checked, and then it'll think again. I don't want that to happen because all of that just takes time. It's time like right now where I'm just sitting here and I'm waiting for the next action to happen. And this happens because it's doing research, it's thinking, the context window is too long, all sorts of different combinations come together. And that's what allows us to kind of take that first sneak peek. Always is going to tell you it sees the issue. That's great. And then it's going to tell you it sees the issue again. And probably it's going to tell you it sees the issue again because, yeah, look, it sees the issue again because each one of these is kind of like thinking out loud. And so just as we kind of think about, okay, what do I know? And you go back and you ask yourself these questions internally. That's what the AI is trying to do itself. All right, now it sees the issue. We have a different format. Okay, so this is a great thing to note. So I'm going to hit stop right here, right when it was doing stuff, because what I noticed while I was reading this, and this is why it's beneficial to read this as you go, is that I think it's off the spot. And so I'm going to just, you can always just check in right here. Cursor does a great job with allowing you to interrupt and then come back into a thought. So I see it kind of going down the wrong route. And what I want it to do is I want to match our database design so our routing is based off the person-centric DB design. We should not adapt or change or patch for the old system. We should scrap the old system and design for our ideal. Let me know if you see legacy code and we can decide how to handle it. So that is going to basically make sure that it doesn't keep going. And what triggered me here is that it sees a contacts and ID. And I know that right now, all of our IDs should be coming off a person ID because a person, a contact is just a person. So everything should be based off of that. That's just my own design. So you can have your own designs. But here it finds the issue, and now it's going to start changing our APIs or our routes. And to make sure that we don't go the wrong direction, I wanted to stop it right here and handle it. And then I never want it to be creating a new database for me, so I always just check that it doesn't do this. So I'm going to come over here, and I have a connection to my database. This is also a good thing to have. Let me know if you want some more. If you want some more tutorials on something that I mentioned here, let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to continue to make these as I develop new tools. So let's dive in here. I see that I have 17 tables here. I'm going to right-click on that. I'm going to hit refresh. This is going to let me know if the AI has actually tried to make new ones. It didn't, so that's great. Come back over into here. Another thing that I want to make sure of is I'm telling it to be mindful of my database, and yet I don't know if it actually is being mindful of my database. It will try, but one of the things that really works well is if you make sure that you have a database MCP wired up inside of your IDE, in my case Cursor. If you wire this up, it's going to have much better handling. It basically it's kind of like having a translator. And so you can think of these MCPs servers as being a translator. And so your code or Claude or LLM doesn't speak natively to the database, but it can speak to it through English. Well, that's great. However, if you hook up an MCP to it, you can kind of think like now they share the same dictionary. So now it's just much faster for them to work together. They can ask each other questions more directly. So it just allows the middleman to kind of be reduced, and they're able to talk good, and I talk better. And one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes when I'm working, one of these will just go red, and I just come back into Cursor, and I turn it off, turn it back on. So if you find that you are trying to use the Postgres MCP, and you are finding that there is some nuances in its database communication, double check that that's in there and that it's working. And to get MCPs working, one of the things that I found work really well is I just start talking to my console and say, hey, look, I'm trying to add this MCP. Here's what I found online. Can you research it? Can you help me get it installed? And it actually does a fantastic job of installing MCPs. So if you want to see a tutorial on that, I'd be happy to walk you through that as well. But here is what I'm giving it. I've done my checks. The databases are good. It's connected to the database. So now when I'm telling it to double check the database design, I've made sure that it has accurate information to look at. Why this is doing this, I haven't talked about what we have over here much and how I use it, but you can see here, these are all of my commits and check-ins and branches. This is tied directly to Git. If you want to know more about Git, it's absolutely essential, but I'll tell you in a high level what it is. It's basically a giant code repository. Every time I feel like I have a stable build or I've made a significant change, I go ahead and I make a Git commit. I push the code into a saved state. That saved state is each one of these, and then I have little notes that get associated with it. So the last one that I associated was I still need to refine the leads detail linking, and then we can say that, then the rest of this was actually auto-generated by what Claude up here, or not Claude, well, it is probably behind the scenes, who knows, but what the AI autofill is. So if I click this autofill button, what's going to happen is it's going to tell me all of the changes. It's going to try to summarize all of the changes that we've been working on. So it's looking at all these code change sets. It's probably looking at some of the conversation here, and it's talking about what's happened and what the changes are that went into that. So I like this. It's very handy, but I also really think it's important for me to make my own notes on what I think is happening. So I always, before I make a commit, I tell it what's going on. And I try not to do a commit when it's in the middle of writing and generating and modifying code, because what happens at that point is you're going to get code that gets pushed that is not fully saved. So we're going to wait for just a minute, and I will make my own comment, but then we'll do a checkpoint, because as you make changes through the code, you're going to find that these checkpoints allow you to roll back. And one of the best tricks that you have is being able to roll back your code to a point where it was actually working and then try again. And that's one of the greatest ways to learn, and it's one of the vibe coding superpowers, so don't neglect it. But let's go ahead and read really quick here. Step 5, cleaning the test solutions. Remove legacy components, great. Updated the routing, great. Let's see how it works. The user clicks the eyeball, so it thinks it's going to be working. Great. So those all look great. Now I'm going to come back over to here. I'm going to refresh. It's going to give me a clean slate for errors. No new errors show up. That's great. I'm going to take a look under one of our users. This is what was throwing the error before. Nothing, no errors there, so that is great. I should be able to start testing these out. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, note functionality isn't there. Profile information, I don't know what that was, but it obviously broke. So we crashed something. I'm going to do that again. So I go to the eyeball. I go to lead scoring. All right, so we can figure out if that's what we want to do, or we can make a note. So some of the times, can you add this to our to-do list? So I'm going to have the AI, it already has a to-do list, but I'm going to have it keep this to-do list item. I'm going to say add this to our to-do list on the details view for a person. If you click lead scoring, you will crash the system. We can build this functionality later. Good enough. But I did notice our notes are not connected. Let's look at the database and see what we need to do to make sure our communication layer is aligned with our notes system properly. Thanks. Okay, that's going to go off and do some more work. That's how it's doing. I'm going to go ahead and say this is still in process, but solid. That lets me know that if I needed to come back to this, at least in this moment, I think that it's a good place to come back to. So I could always roll back to that spot. And that is, one of those things that I would have to show you in a Git tutorial. Super valuable to do though. So this is a whole lot of information, very high level. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to do some more of these and more in depth. And I probably need to start at number 1. But before I make that next video, go ahead and hit like, leave me a comment, and help me know how this is going to be valuable to you and what would be better in the future. And have a great day.